Good evening, and welcome to MBCC News. I'm Madison Scuderi, and I'm here with
Chris Roth.
Today we're going to talk about Obama visiting Cuba, ISIS ideology, Trump propaganda, and chemical warfare. Today, Barack Obama landed Air Force One on Cuban soil. Today marks 88 years since our last president, Calvin Coolidge, has visited Cuba. This is a remarkable moment in history, as the relationship between the United States and Cuba had been extremely hostile ever since the Cold War. The communist leader Fidel Castro had terrible relations with John F. Kennedy due to the Embargo Act against Cuba. At the time, Nikita Khrushchev, the leader of the Soviet Union, was America's biggest competitor. Our president at the time, John F. Kennedy, tried to imperialize Cuba by having their own leader placed there to rule the people. The people of Cuba did not like this and elected their own leader. They wanted someone to bring nationalistic pride back into the country and get rid of the leadership America had over them. They elected Fidel Castro. Because of the Cold War and the negative relationship with Khrushchev and America, Khrushchev saw the small country of Cuba, a few miles just off the coast of America, as a benefit to his country. Because Americans feared communism so much, they saw Castro working with Nikita Khrushchev as a huge threat. This resulted in having the Kennedy administration order an invasion of Cuba by the CIA trained Cuban exiles. On April 17, 1961, they invaded Cuba and fought in Havana, later to be called the Bay of Pigs. But due to Castro's high intelligence, he knew well in advance about the invasion. He was well prepared, and the end result was about 300 soldiers dead and over 6,000 Cubans and Americans wounded. This was a failed attempt on the Kennedy administration. After the failed attempt at the Bay of Pigs, Kennedy imposed a full trade embargo on Cuba in 1962. By enacting a full embargo act on Cuba, Kennedy thought this would hurt Cuba's economy, when in actuality, it drove Cuba closer to the Soviets. The Soviets helped Cuba with their imports and exports, as well as were the direct buyer of their sugar, resulting in no economic downfall. Because of the Bay of Pigs attack, Castro ordered missiles to be placed in Cuba pointing at America. This resulted in the Cuban Missile Crisis on October 14, 1962. The tension between Russia and the United States almost resulted in a nuclear war, or World War III. After understanding why America had such bad relations with Cuba, we can understand why Obama visiting Cuba was such a big deal. Obama's goal is to have equal relations and take a step forward from the Cold War. Obama had been working on new policies regarding Cuba with our Congress and Raul Castro, Fidel's brother. We can also relate this remarkable moment, having made peace between two nations, to President Nixon visiting China to meet with Mao Zedong in Beijing, February 21, 1972. This is important because of the bad relationship between China and the United States, different opinion on communism.
Thanks, Madison. Drones continue to be a key strategical advantage in the United States' fight against foreign threats. However, they often come under heavy criticism when they end up harming those not intended to be struck. This concept was perfectly illustrated today when United States forces drone striked a moving truck in Yemen believed to be carrying al-Qaeda militants. When the drone hit, 10 militants were successfully killed, but in what U.S. officials cited as a terrible case of bad luck, a vehicle with construction workers was also struck, killing 3 civilians. In response, the people of Yemen have been vocal on their condemnation of the drone strikes America continues to use. Some have even argued that it makes the United States more of a threat than al-Qaeda. This isn't the first time that America has killed civilians in a drone strike. According to documentation that a whistleblower provided to The Intercept in 2015, drone strikes frequently kill civilians, and nearly 90% of the people killed in airstrikes during Operation Haymaker, a 5-month military operation in 2012 targeting al-Qaeda operations in eastern Afghanistan, were not intended targets. Similarly, in London, non-profit Bureau of Investigative Journalism estimated in regards to U.S. drone strikes in Pakistan that of the 704 people killed who have been identified by the Bureau, only 295 were reported to be militants, meaning that about 58% were believed to be non-combatants. Events like this have led Army Chaplain Christopher John Ontal and other members of the U.S. military to quit the service as an act of protest. As well as dropping out of the military, Ontal wrote to Obama discussing his disapproval of the United States military use of drones. In his letter, he wrote, "The executive branch continues to claim the right to kill anyone, anywhere on Earth, at any time, for secret reasons, based on secret evidence, and a secret process undertaken by unidentified officials. I refuse to support this policy of unaccountable killing." 4 former members of the Air Force penned a similar letter of disapproval in November of 2015, warning the president that the strike served as a recruitment tool similar to Guantanamo Bay. However, there is another aspect of America's military efforts that has reflected a similar problem to drone strikes. To discuss this, we look back at a former time in our nation's history. Drone strikes have altered America's public opinion on the war on terror and have come under heavy criticism from people across the world. Similar responses were seen when the United States of America entered the Vietnam War and was using napalm, a flammable liquid, on the people of Vietnam as a military weapon. Napalm, which was considered one of the most successful weapons of the time, was quickly employed in the Vietnam War in 1963. 388,000 tons of napalm were dropped on Vietnam during the 1963 to 1973 period. At the beginning, napalm was used in flamethrowers for U.S. and ARVN ground forces, and soon became an effective weapon in clearing bunkers. Even if the flame could not penetrate into the entire bunker, it still consumed all the oxygen and suffocated those inside. Flamethrowers were also used to destroy enemies' villages. Later on, U.S. bombers began to drop napalm bombs. The explosion of napalm bombs caused a lot more devastation than flamethrowers. A 2,500-yard area could be engulfed in flames by a single bomb. However, dropping napalm from high-speed aircraft was not so accurate. This resulted in a large number of innocent civilians suffering serious harm. The wound caused by napalm is too deep to heal. When contacting human flesh, napalm immediately clung to the skin and melts off the flesh. The only way to put it out is to smother it, as trying to wipe it off only spread it around and expanding the burnt area. The effects of napalm on the human body are unbearably painful and almost always cause death among its victims. Napalm gradually became a symbol of the brutality of the Vietnam War. Napalm is the most terrible pain you can ever imagine, said Kim Phuc, a survivor of napalm bombing. Water boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Napalm generates 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit to 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit. Kim Phuc sustained third-degree burns to portions of her body. She was one of the only survivors of such extreme measures. Unlike many wars before, when the brutality of napalm was censored by the government, in Vietnam it was exposed massively by the media. Thousands of pictures and videos about napalm's devastation were reported daily in the press. One of the most iconic pictures about the cruelty of napalm was the Napalm Girl, a photograph of a 9-year-old Kim Phuc and a group of children running down the road of a South Vietnamese napalm attack on her village. Kim Phuc was naked and screaming because napalm was burning her body. The more the media emphasized on the pain caused by napalm, the more it helped to strengthen the anti-war movement in the United States and across the world, where people believed the United States military was being brutal to the innocent civilians of Vietnam. The brutality and overall backlash of the use of napalm and drone strikes are similar in these senses. We now turn to Chris Roth to discuss an aspect of modern politics. Chris?
Thanks, Chris. Now into Trump propaganda. During Donald Trump's political campaign over the past year, he's taken American politics to a whole nother level we have only seen once before. The types of propaganda we see from Mr. Trump are glittering generalities, bandwagon, testimonial, labeling, plain folks, card stacking, and repetition. All of these types come together to draw a sense of nationalism amongst the American people. The passion he shows for what he believes in is used as a powerful source of propaganda. Not only does he reach for the extreme in many situations, his strategy he's known to use is be a straight talker. The last time we have seen this type of propaganda campaign is when President Ronald Reagan was running for president. Donald Trump and Ronald Reagan show very similar qualities in their running campaigns. Both sparked their propaganda around the emotion of fear because of being extreme and simplistic. As seen now by anti-Trump campaigns and anti-Reagan campaigns in the past, they are both being attacked for their ideology. Reagan, along with Trump, were dismissed as a serious candidate. Jeffrey Lord, a former Reagan aide who was very close to the Trump campaign, came out and said, Reagan was ridiculed as not serious and a B-movie actor. They said over and over he could never win, until he did. It's happening again, I really feel it. When people talk about Trump's campaign, the idea that comes to mind is Trump's passion for what he believes in. Reagan's son, Michael Reagan, recently told Newsmax that Trump speaks with the kind of passion his father so brilliantly conveyed. That's why America right now has surrounded Trump, in this case because he's off the cuff and speaks from his own passion. The controversy over illegal immigration has been just an important conflict for Trump as it was for Reagan. Trump created controversy and won support from many for his outspoken comments about illegal immigration and the lack of border security. Reagan signed the Immigration Reform and Control Act in 1986, making it illegal to knowingly hire or recruit illegal immigrants and require employers to attest to their employees' immigration status. The way Trump connects with Americans is that he doesn't hide behind any political correctness. His illegal immigration comments demonstrate this direct form of communication. Reagan talked to people from the heart and was dubbed the great communicator. Trump shares Reagan's overall aim as president, to make America great again. Trump said he began the process of trademarking the slogan, "Make America Great Again," and criticized some of his GOP opponents for using it. Reagan prominently featured the slogan on his campaign materials as he ran for president in the election of 1981. Trump and Reagan both have defended gun rights and the Second Amendment. Reagan in 1986 signed the Firearm Owners Protection Act, which, among other things, ended federal records keeping on ammunition sales. He said if we give up that part of the Constitution, that is the Second Amendment, we give up part of our freedom and increase the chances that we will lose it all. Trump told Breitbart News in April, "It is so important that we maintain the Second Amendment and that we maintain it strongly. And one of the main reasons is because the good people, the outstanding people, follow laws and norms, but the bad ones don't." Trump and Reagan show very similar qualities in their political campaigns, which have affected their almost identical ideals in their propaganda. Tell us what you think at MBCC.com or on our Twitter page at MBCC News. Thank you. Good evening. This is Chris Roth, and I'm here interviewing James Roth on the comparisons between Donald Trump and Ronald Reagan. Do you remember Ronald Reagan?
Yes. He was the first president I actually could vote for. I just had turned 18, and I was excited to vote for him because the country was in bad shape, couldn't get a job, interest rates were high, so he was the kind of leader we were looking for.
So apparently you liked Ronald Reagan, as you said. Why did you?
Yes, I was a big Reagan supporter. He was very patriotic president. He got the country motivated, and he got everybody working again. He really did a nice job with the economy and fighting the Cold War against the Russians.
Can you tell me the similarities between Donald Trump and Ronald Reagan's political campaign?
I think they're very similar. They're just pro-America. They want to get things done. They want to, put jobs back in the economy, get people working, get the middle class making better wages. They both, what Reagan did and what Trump is saying is very similar. So I think they come from the same school of thought. Oh.
And for the last question, do you like Donald Trump and why?
Yes, I like Trump. I like what he's saying. Again, it's all about, getting people to work so they could, make a good living to support their families. And if he's going to bring jobs back and strengthen the military, that's something I'm all for. So, yes, I do like him.
Earlier today, U.S.-backed Syrian rebels have moved within 3 miles of the ISIS stronghold Manbij. U.S. Central Command spokesperson Colonel Patrick Ryder said on Saturday that SDF fighters had seized more than 40 square miles of territory during the advance. More than 55 airstrikes have been carried out since the offensive began last Monday, he said, adding that the goal was to hamper ISIS's ability to move fighters, weapons, finances, and supplies into and out of Syria and Iraq. The SDF army consists mostly of Kurdish and Arab militias who have come together to fight ISIS. 3,000 Arab fighters, as well as 500 Kurds, with command and control support from U.S. Special Forces, are fighting to gain control of the vital trading city which lies in between the ISIS de facto capital of Raqqa and the Turkish border. This is good news for the United States, who have been involved in the conflict with ISIS since June 2014. ISIS is a group based entirely on a certain ideology, rather than one based on nation. The U.S. fights this group purely because the values of ISIS go against those of America,
and the U.S. is determined to stop the spread of these ideals. In a way, the situation currently unfolding across the Middle East is comparable to the Vietnam War, when the United States fought the Viet Cong. While the Viet Cong and ISIS have different mentalities, the United States have a similar view on both. Actions were taken in both cases to prevent the spread of what is viewed as an evil ideology. In 1962, U.S. President John F. Kennedy first sent troops into South Vietnam in order to stop the communist North Vietnam from spreading their ideas to the South. As a result, United States troops remained in the country for the next 12 years in what became an unwinnable war. Many parallels can be drawn to the current situation in the Middle East. ISIS has only been a caliphate for a little over 2 years, but since then has grown considerably and now control land containing up to 8 million people. As a result, the United States has made considerable efforts to weaken ISIS, but the group has not faltered. Many have called for all-out war to be declared on ISIS, especially after many of the large-scale attacks they have committed across Europe and North America. No one knows whether or not this drastic action will ever be taken, but if it is, we could very well have another prolonged and costly war on our hands. Tell us what you think at MBCC.com or on Twitter at MBCC, and have a good night.